What's going on, everybody? We are back again with another interview with Over the Octagon podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, veteran of the sport, former football player, Eryk Anders. How's it going today, my man?
Man, it's going good, man. Nice, typical spring Sunday here in Alabama. Rainy, humid, muggy. We're moving.
I hear you. We're at in Alabama. Are you at?
I live in Hoover, which is like a
Okay.
suburb of Birmingham.
Sure, man. Yeah, I'm right. I'm kind of right off the 20 exit myself. Probably about 40, 35 minutes from Birmingham. Not too far, straight shot up.
Oh, okay, all right. What you live in, east or west?
West. So like Villa Rica.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's why we're gonna talk about it a little later, but you got some stuff coming up right by my house, man.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. You're definitely a guest that we've wanted to have on. I know that you're pretty local or close enough to our area, and we're a Georgia-based podcast, man. So it feels good to have some people that are close to home come on the show, and especially you being a current UFC veteran. I'd say you've been in the game for a while now, and then especially to have a name like you on our show, it means a lot to us, man. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, anytime, brother.
But yeah, so we'll get kind of started, man. We'll get kind of. I want to kind of know a little bit about your early on life and kind of what got you to where you are, now. So I definitely want to talk about your stint playing football. I know you played high school football in San Antonio, and then that kind of led you into playing for the University of Alabama, which in the name of college sports, it really don't get much bigger than that. And you coming to play there as a linebacker with a coach like Saban, it's got to be that right there alone has to mean something to how your career has progressed along the way. And I just kind of want to know, how did playing at the University of Alabama and Coach Saban kind of help you getting into your MMA career?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate with sports. I've always had really good coaches. My high school coaches were really great, like leaders, develop
Sure.
men. Nick Saban, obviously the same thing, the best to ever do it.
Back then.
Um, and man, I don't really know if like football or anything from football, like what led me to fighting, but
Sure.
like I said, having those great coaches kind of teaches you how to be a man and face adversity. Obviously I wanted to play in the NFL. The NFL didn't work, so one door closed, so I had to go in the window somewhere else.
Sure. Now, were you already training martial arts while playing football, or is this something new
No,
that kind of came out after college?
yeah, I never threw a punch, like I never had one day of training. I fought a bunch growing up, just because us '80s and
Sure.
'90s kids, we were outside, and that's just
For
what we
sure.
did. These kids nowadays are a little bit different.
Yeah,
So like
man.
I just always liked it. I wrestled in high school. It was always my favorite sport, but before I found fighting, just because I like individual sports better than team sports. But and there's really no money in wrestling, so I knew that football would be well, I thought football was going to be the way that
Sure.
I made a living, growing up.
But you did have a quick stint in the NFL, I believe, with the Cleveland Browns, right? Was you
Yeah,
got undrafted, or you were undrafted by them in 2008, I believe, was it?
2010.
2010. Okay.
Uh, yeah, so I played for, I got on with them, got cut, went to Canada, got cut, played a year of arena football, and actually the strength and conditioning coach for that arena team was a boxing coach or a striking
Okay.
coach or whatever. So, I saw him, kind of, fooling around. I was like, yo, let me get around or whatever. So I just, hit mitts or whatever, and I was like, damn, I kind of like this. But never really thought about because MMA isn't what it is now back then.
No, not at all.
In 2010, like it was, and like the UFC, they only did pay-per-views back then. I'm pretty sure,
Yep.
and they were all like maybe once every 4 months or 3 months or something like that. Now it's every weekend, so the sport has definitely grown, which has been great to see.
Sure.
From the time I started peaking, showing interest in it to where it is now, and being able to compete at the highest level is, kind of remarkable. So, yeah, so that's like the first time I ever trained, and then I came back to Alabama, and there's just not a lot of MMA going on here at the time. So I did a little jujitsu, saw some dudes sparring, and knew I could do that. Thought I could do
Yeah.
that anyways, and through a mutual friend, got introduced to Walt Harris, who
Okay.
that was my first real MMA experience. The coach who I wouldn't recommend anybody going to him as a coach uh, for coaching, just because he's not like I'm not even sure if he coaches anymore, but it definitely wasn't very safe or
Sure.
competent. He was like, yeah, can you fight? And I'm like 24, 22, 24 years old, something like that. Fought a bunch, in the locker room and growing up in Russell. So I was like, yeah, of course, but
I
I
mean,
didn't
you
have.
do see it a lot more now where people are kind of starting their MMA careers mid-20s to late 20s. It's kind of different than it used to be. I mean, obviously you don't have too many John Joneses out there who started it, becomes a world champion at 20 years old, But there's
Yeah.
plenty of guys in the that are coming up right now that are in their early 20s or mid 20s that kind of just started in martial arts and haven't been training very long, but it's a natural fit for them. It's kind of the same thing when I was growing up. I wrestled as well. And you would see guys who would not ever wrestle a day in their life. And I started wrestling when I was 5, all the way up until high school. Past high school, and you see guys that start their sophomore year of high school and they're winning a state title as a junior. And it's like some people are just naturally built for it.
Yeah, and so I go in there, the coach is like, can you fight? I'm like, yeah, just like any other dude who in
Sure.
my position, I just, played college sports and, relatively athletic and, you know, kind of arrogant, don't know what I don't know. You
I
know what I
know.
mean?
Yeah.
And I got in there with Walt, and Walt beat me up pretty good. And but I was hooked. I knew it'd be a
Sure.
challenge. I knew it'd be fun, and I knew it'd be something that I would have to dedicate myself to. Kind of give me purpose because I was doing the 9 to 5 thing, and that sucked. And so it was just kind of like wake up, rinse, recycle, repeat. But when I found MMA, it was just kind of the best thing ever.
Yep. So how many I guess amateur fights did you have pre going pro? Because I know you went on a good little run, 10 and 0 run as a pro when you got into the professional fighting. How many amateur fights did you have before getting into your first professional fight?
Yeah, I had 24, 25
Whew.
amateur fights. But again, my coach at the time, he just wasn't competent. Like I was
Sure.
fighting every other weekend and for free.
Ah,
He was just, kind of parading around the guy who played at Alabama and,
sure.
that kind of thing. So, luckily, I ran into my current coach now, Chris Conley, who
Yeah.
you know, just about everybody from the state of Alabama who's fought in the UFC has trained with him at some point or another. Myself, Walt Harris, Marcus Brimage, John Salter. Um, there's somebody else, not Brock Weaver. There may be one or two other people, but they all trained with him at some point. So, uh, yeah, he definitely knows what he's doing. I'm going on my 19th fight
Yeah.
in the UFC. This is year 8 for me. So, I've had a pretty good career with him.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you've had a very exciting career. I mean, you fought some of the best in the world, some of the best of all time. I mean, your first loss didn't even come till you fought, which some would say top 10 of his career, and Leona Machida. And then you continued your career, and now you're coming off what some would say your biggest win of your career against Chris Weidman. And I know post fight you had mentioned, this is you probably have 2 fights left. Is that 2 fights left on your contract, or is that just
Yeah.
you're mentally like, I got 2 fights left and then I'm just gonna take it,
Man,
take it and go?
I truly love the sport. I train all day, every day. It's not an issue. I genuinely love and enjoy the sport, but I'm like competing. These guys,
Sure.
they're just getting younger and better. I'm 38 now. I think 20 fights is a really good milestone.
Sure.
Very few people reach that number. So I think it's a good number to hang it up, because Father Time is undefeated. You know what I mean?
We
I'm
see
no
we see
spring
it every
chicken.
every year, every day. We always see it, man. People, this it eventually catches up. No one
Yeah,
ever wants to admit it, but it does, you know?
yeah, and I've done well with my money. I've bought some
That's good.
houses, so I got some residual income. I'm getting ready to open up a gym here in Birmingham. So
That's awesome.
I don't need to fight anymore. I just do it because I like it. I want to hit 20, and then you know venture out and do some other things. I manage some fighters. I got a promising
Awesome.
fighter in Anna Crutchfield who
Okay.
is getting ready to fight for the Fury belt in I think August.
Nice.
So she'll be in the UFC before long, and I got some other guys that are up and coming. So I kind of got my trying to diversify my portfolio, if you will.
Yeah, you seem like a guy I have it in my notes. You're just like a kind of like a jack of all trades type guy. Like you got the football background, the MMA background, done a little side acting on the side, and you're doing a lot of pro grappling events between like Fury and then now with this upcoming grappling event you have coming up. Is it just kind of like something that's like mentally like I just want to stay busy, so I'll just have all this stuff to do just to kind of keep busy?
Yeah, I like to
Yeah.
stay busy. I don't sleep much, so like
Yeah.
I just kind of go crazy if I don't have anything to do, and it's kind of also when I tend to get in trouble. So
Sure.
I need to like stay busy, stay occupied, keep my mind sharp. And I think it's just who I am as a person. Like I'm never gonna say no if you present me with an opportunity. And I think unlike a lot of people, I take advantage of my opportunities. I think a lot of people kind of like fighting, for example. Like you'll have like some guys will have like a short notice opportunity to get to the
Yep.
UFC, and they can't do it because they haven't been training. I made my debut on 10 days notice.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Went out there and got a knockout. I took advantage of my opportunity. I was ready for my opportunities. So I think that's just kind of something that not just fighters, but people in general kind of miss out on. Like the opportunities are different, depending on what field you're in or whatever. But if you're on the couch and they call you and it's like, hey, can you fight next week? Like, and you can't do it, then you just miss an opportunity. So
100%.
I
Yeah,
never
and you
wanted to
seems
be
like
in
a
that
lot of times
position.
in your career that's kind of been the case that there's been a lot of either short notice on your end, where you've stepped in and took on for the UFC. So I mean, like to be a guy, a business guy, and a loyal guy to the UFC. I'm sure that they tend to appreciate that a lot because a lot of guys won't take those short notice calls, and you have a select few people that'll just be ready in the moment, and that's probably why you've had so many fights in your career with the
Yeah,
UFC.
to be honest, that's probably why I'm still around because I did go on a stint where I lost like three in a row. I think I lost to like Thiago Santos, Thiago Santos, Theodoro Roundtree, knocked out Vinicius Mohair, and then
Marrero.
lost to
Yeah,
Jocko, and so my career has been like this, but they
yeah,
appreciate my willingness to fight and to fight anybody, and B the type of fighter I am. They like my style, I think.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. Anybody that's willing to go in and look for a finish. That's what, as fans, that's what we want to see. Obviously, we don't want to
Yeah, for
see,
sure.
we don't want to see a guy who's 29 fights or 20 fights in with 19 decision wins.
Yeah, exactly. And I
But
have
that
had some decision wins. These
sure.
guys. The higher you get, the harder they are
Oh, for
to
sure.
finish, of course. But there's no secret. I'm always looking to finish the fight.
That's how it goes. And I know you've got what, 2 fight of the night bonuses, 2 performance of the night bonuses.
I don't know what's what, but I
I
think
believe
I've
that's the
got
number.
four bonuses. I know.
4 total bonuses. Yeah, two fights and 2 performances. So that's solid. But yeah, I
And
mean,
to be
coming
honest, I should have had one for my debut as well, but you know,
hey,
the guy who got it got on there talking about he's poor and his kids play with shampoo bottles for toys or whatever, and I'm just like, dude, me too. You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Me
Hey
too.
man, we all have tough lives, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know you said, and you had mentioned in one of your previous interviews or spoken about last year being the best year of your life. Like a lot of good things came in 2024. Tell me a little bit about what that was and like why 2024 was such a good year for you, and why you're looking to continue that in 2025.
Man, I just, to be honest, I just, cut ties with everybody who didn't have a positive influence. I got a crazy ex-wife who's crazy toxic, who I tried to like maintain a friendship
Sure.
with after a divorce, but she would call me on like fight night.
Oh,
You're with another. I'm like, yo, we're not together. You know what
yeah.
I mean? I don't understand what the issue is. You're with other people. I'm with other people. Why are you hounding me? So I've cut ties with her altogether. I got custody of my son.
It's awesome.
Um, I'm like maybe a year and a half sober, almost 2 years sober. When I say sober, like I'll drink socially or whatever, but
Sure.
I used to go out party and do all the party drugs and things like that, and then you just
Sure.
can't train properly when you're hungover all the time. Um, so I bought two houses. So once I put all the you know took all the
BS.
trash out, if you will,
Sure.
it's crazy. Just like literally overnight, my life just kind of did this. Won my last two fights, finished
Yep.
Weidman. So yeah, I'm just kind of trying to continue on that path. And now even this year, like I said, I'm getting ready to open up a gym. I got this fight with Leroy with Christian Duncan coming
Yeah.
up, this grappling match, and some other commentating opportunities. So yeah, I just, got rid of all the clutter, as Nick Saban would
Yeah.
say, and
Sure.
you just kind of like I don't even remember what it was like to like feel like this, like mentally,
Sure.
like be clear and have clarity and be how, not just be like a robot and like, struggling to, you know, whatever. So yeah, I just once you cut all the BS out,
The extra
it's
weight off. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's you move a lot freer.
100%, 100%. I do have a buddy of mine who's a diehard Alabama football fan, and I had to tell him, I was like, "Yeah, you're going to be on our show tomorrow." I was like, "I know you have one question," and he did, and he said, "What's a better feeling, a strip sack in the Natty or a UFC win?"
Okay, so that's like a loaded question because it's
It
hard,
is.
because that particular strip sack, that was my last year.
Yep.
That was my senior year, against Texas. I'm from Texas. I wanted to go to Texas. They weren't, they didn't offer me. Alabama did. The whole road to get there to
Yeah.
there, what I'm saying? We had Shula, we sucked, and we had Saban came, we sucked, and we did well, then we went undefeated. Um, so like, and it went like the last play of my career, but it was like there was like maybe one more defensive,
Sure.
we got on the field one more time after that, and they threw a pick. So it's like the story is literally a script out of a movie.
100%.
The Yes, and there's like, yeah, it's cool, that's awesome, but like when you add up all the other like little details, like me being from Texas, wanting to go to Texas, Texas not rocking with me. Then we get to come back my senior year, and that was the first year that I was a starter, and then I could make that play, and so but then I've knocked plenty of people out in the UFC. I
Yeah.
think I've got like you know 8 or 9 wins and probably 4 knockouts. So I've knocked way more people out than I have
Yeah.
gotten
Strip
strip
sacks.
sacks in the national championship.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean the moment is probably what makes it, you know, just that
but
much
but
more special.
but it's but then also like in football it's like you did that and like you have a team to like
Yep.
there's like 125 people on the field with you at the moment that's on your team plus the
Celebrating.
coaches and stuff. In MMA, um, there's only like three other people with you.
Yeah.
Obviously like the arena like goes crazy, goes nuts, and you just did that by yourself.
Yep.
So but like it's I don't know, dude. It's either way, it's pretty exhilarating.
Either way, it's
You
pretty
know,
amazing. I know. All right. Well, so now we'll kind of move forward into what's coming. What's coming for you in the future? I know in August you have your upcoming fight, and then in July you have this upcoming grappling match. Which, when I tell you it's 5 minutes down the street from my house, it's legitimately 5 minutes down the street from my house. So we actually we reached out to the guy hosting the event to try to see about doing some possible, commentary, in-person interviews, because we're local, and my daughter trains right down the street from where your event's going to be,
Oh,
and things
dope.
like that. So it would be like, and then he got back to us and he wanted to do a bunch of things, and then unfortunately, with scheduling and things like that, the date didn't really work out for us to do much media content for it. But I still plan on bringing my daughter to the event so I can have her watch it. She's young; she'll be 4 this year, but she just got her third stripe in jujitsu, so she's really into the grappling right now.
Man, my son like literally grew up on a wrestling mat.
Yeah,
I was a senior in college whenever I had him, so I started training when he was like 2 or so. So, he'd be on there on the diapers. And now, he's a pretty good wrestler. Like it just kind of like organically
sure.
makes them interested in the sport. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, yeah, nah, and you being you got a boy, I got a girl, so being a girl dad, and then like me being a wrestler my whole life, my wife was so skeptical. I was like, come on, just like let her try it, see if she likes it. Like this is gonna mean a lot to me. So we got her into it, and I never knew she was gonna love it as much as she did, and she's like, she loves it, man.
yeah, so
Everything about
you
it,
you got to sell the wife on the self
self
defense
defense.
aspect of it. You know what I mean? If she's out for a jog and the boogeyman jumps out, he's not going to square up and want to throw hands. He's going to grab her, and they're going to be on the
Yep,
ground wrestling around. So
that's true. I think
if
she's
I
being more accepted to it now. So
yeah, yeah. When she sees, that she's not, I mean, I don't know how y'all train, if they train rough or whatever. She's coming home with like,
not quite
fat
yet.
burn on her
Once she
face.
gets into the bigger kids class, she's a little young
Yeah,
now, but she's still learning. They're now getting into where they're doing positional grappling and things like that. So
yeah,
she's learning it and she loves it. I mean, she begs for it every day. She asks for it every day. Dad, can we go to jujitsu today? And I'm like, you only got class on Mondays and Wednesdays, but once you get older, you'll do more, I'm sure. But
yeah,
she
yeah.
loves it. But yeah, this is going to be her first. I'm going to take her to the event, so I'll be there. Just with her, so that way she can come and watch an event, and then you're going to be headlining it with Jamie Pickett. How did that
Mm.
kind of come about? I know you guys just recently fought in the UFC last year, so
Yeah,
now you guys are going to be doing pro grappling. How did this kind of come about?
we fought a little over a year ago, and I think
Yep.
he was supposed to grapple Chris Barnett,
Okay,
but Chris Barnett couldn't do it or whatever, so they hit me up because I'm right down the street in Alabama, and I
nice,
was like, yeah, all right. The cool thing about like grappling now is it's such a growing thing. Like you can
sure,
like make money, and for me, it's just reps. You know what I
yep,
mean? And then I have a fight like a little less than a month later, so it'll be a good like gauge where I'm at.
little
Um,
warm up, see where the
yeah,
body's at.
yeah,
Yeah,
essentially. Because you can spar and stuff and do all that, but one thing, like I tell all the young fighters that you can't really simulate in sparring and training is the desperation for a win.
sure,
I think like in training and sparring, you'll be a little bit more accepting of a takedown or be a little bit more passive in like certain positions. But I fought Jamie. I know that
yeah,
he's a good grappler and he's gonna really fight his ass off to advance his position or submit me or whatever. So it'll be a good kind of, I wouldn't say a gauge, but like it'll be good to be out there, go full speed. Maybe not obviously without no punches or whatever, and just straight
sure.
wrestling and grappling or whatever. But it'll be a good time.
Yeah, it's good reps. I mean, and you didn't have this fight with Leroy Duncan coming up signed before you agreed to this. So was this something that or did you already have it signed? I'm not sure if you did or
No,
not.
no.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
think
think
I
so. I thought it
signed to
was
fight him
announced kind
like
of
two
after.
weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've had this fight or this match booked with Jamie for, some months now.
yep.
And, that Leroy, that Duncan fight, it just kind of materialized maybe a week or two ago. So,
Nice, nice.
yeah.
But yeah, man, we look forward to that. I know I'm pretty excited. I just happened to be driving into work, man, and I just saw a billboard and I was like, wait a second. It caught my attention. I was like, I know those guys. I was like, what are they doing in my little small town of, Villa Rica? What's going on here? And then I just looked it up and I was like, oh man, like these guys are gonna be grappling right down the street from my house. I was like, this is pretty electric because we don't get much stuff like this in this area. I mean, you're familiar probably with this whole stretch. There's not a lot, Birmingham. I mean, Alabama was kind of like the home. Wasn't that where the UFC kind of had their first pay per view was in Alabama? But after
In
that, it kind of
Dothan,
trickled
yeah.
off.
Yeah, because Alabama, it's lawless over here. Even when I
Yeah,
started fighting, we didn't have a commission.
yeah.
I remember going to my first fight and the promoter calling me and he was like, "Hey, they want you to have your blood work done within the last 6 months." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I had my blood work done like 2 weeks ago." They didn't ask me to produce any papers. I hadn't had my blood work done in years.
Yeah,
And also I thought as soon as I hung up the phone with him, I was like, "Yo, what if the guy that I'm fighting did that same thing?" And he
yeah.
probably did. Like when I got to the thing and saw who I was fighting, there's zero chance. And the only needle going in that guy's arm is
Yeah,
like a heroin needle or a
that's
crack
funny.
needle or something. But definitely not to draw blood, but to
Yeah, have a little
pro-
fun.
probably be
Yeah,
allowed.
for him.
Yeah, I
I don't know if
guess.
I'd call it fun, but
Yeah,
for
yeah.
him.
For him, yeah.
But yeah, so now you got after that, you'll have your upcoming fight with Christian Leroy Duncan. So this is one of the last two remaining fights on your contract. I mean, he's a knockout guy. It's just kind of perfect matchup for someone like you who's also trying to go out there and get a finish. You guys are going to probably put on an exciting show. What kind of led you to accepting this fight, or was it just like I don't really care who you put in front of me, or was there is there anything behind this opponent being that it's so late in your career?
I mean, not really. I have said no. Like they offered me before they offered me Wadman, they offered me Gregory Rodriguez, and I was like,
Okay,
nah, I'm not. I don't want to. I'm not really looking to fight like up and coming guys.
sure,
Give me somebody like. I feel like I've kind of earned that, not to like
yeah,
you know
absolutely,
be like that, but at the same time, like I'm not trying to be like a stepping stone for some young dude. To rack up a win or
yeah,
I've been through it. So then they offered me Weidman. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Give me a
yeah,
guy like that. And then yeah, I think Leroy's a good fight. I don't Christian, I guess is like Duncan.
yeah,
I think that's a
yeah,
good fight. It's a
Duncan,
fun fight. He does like to strike. He'll clinch and grapple. I haven't done too much film study on him yet, but um, I think he'll have the speed advantage. He moves a lot. He kind of reminds me of uh, damn, I fought him twice, and Darren Stewart.
okay,
Um, and the fact that like they move around and they blitz.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it'll be a fun fight. Because he'll mix it up. He'll
sure,
grapple against the cage and stuff too. So it won't just be a kickboxing match. I don't think, and it won't just be a grappling match. So now, to me, those are the fun fights because you don't
yeah,
know
100%.
what's going to happen. A takedown can come out of nowhere. Those solid shots, those combinations can rip out of nowhere. So I'm really looking forward for the opportunity and all that good stuff. So I know he's game and he'll come forward and
Sure.
we'll have a good time tonight.
I love that, man. I love that. But yeah, so speaking of the Chris Weidman fight, that was Chris Weidman's retirement fight was against you. And obviously you got the big win over him. And now you're getting to go into this next fight when not looking past, Leroy Duncan, but obviously the next fight after that could potentially be what you would say is your last fight, unless you just decide to continue going with the UFC or whatnot. Is there someone that you would want to be in the octagon with for your last fight if that next fight after Leroy Duncan is it?
I always thought me versus Michelle Olenjędrzejczyk or the
Olin Jacek?
Polish, yeah, the Polish kid
Yeah,
would be a fun fight. Two
okay.
lefties who like to, throw. He's got a
Sure.
lot of knockouts. He just knocked out his last guy. Um, and now I think he's training with the fighting nerds. So, those
Yeah,
guys are doing phenomenal. And I've trained down there with those guys too, and really got my ass beat. So I know like the type of training camp that
sure.
is, and so I just think like stylistically, that's a fun fight for people to watch.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that'd be sick. Yeah, those fight nerds guys, they're a mystery right now, man. I don't think really we know what that future is going to hold for any of those guys. I mean,
yeah.
obviously the Carlos Pratis, Ian Gary fight, we kind of saw them kind of take their first loss, but who knows, man? Those training
Yeah,
with those guys.
even in that fight, Carlos had his moments, and even at
Sure.
the end of the fight, still almost finished him.
Almost
So,
finished him, yeah.
those guys are great. I train more with Kyle Bahal
Oh,
more than
yeah.
anybody.
Same
So
weight class, so
yeah, dude, that guy's jiu-jitsu is fucking next level.
yeah, he does a
Um,
lot of kinda side quests too, as I like to call him. He does, he does those, this Cage Fury, or I don't know if it's Cage Fury, but he does a lot of commentary and things like
for
that for
LFA, yeah,
LFA, that's right, LFA, yeah.
I think that's like, okay, so everybody wants to fight for the UFC, right? Just
Sure,
because it's the UFC. There's plenty of other promotions that you can go make a good living fighting
100%.
for, but the UFC, the brand, that opens up so many doors. Like I never would have been on Cobra Kai if I didn't fight in the UFC.
Yeah,
And that's just a fact. And that's okay. That's cool. Like they didn't just, see me walking down the street and be like, hey, we think you could be, this Mexican MMA fighter. That's not how that happened. They want you having the brand of the UFC attached to you will open up so many doors, and you
100%.
just essentially have to walk through it and take advantage. And even if the door's not open, like you can go knock on the door, and then if they tell you no, they once they answer it, they say yes, no, whatever. Like you actually got to get a seat at the table, so to
100%.
speak. You know what I mean? Rather than if you're like just like an amateur fighter or a low level pro, or you fight for another promotion like overseas or whatever, they don't
Yeah,
know. You know what I'm saying? All they know, all the person they see is like UFC fighters. Okay, so that opens their eyes, and then they look at everything else. So I think he's doing a good job leveraging his position where he's at. I think he's in the top five, so even more doors are open
sure.
for him. He's bilingual, has a really charismatic personality. So yeah, that guy can probably do anything that he wants.
Yeah, yeah, nah, they're you very unique. I mean, it's hard to look at some guys who call themselves the fighting nerds and then them be so dominant in their craft. It's kind of
Yeah,
amazing. But yeah, no, and as far as you, like you, we've been talking about you just kind of being, a brand guy, the UFC being the biggest, name in combat sports. You're always willing to take on a fight. We kind of saw similar guys like Kevin Holland last night being one of those guys who never says no to a short notice fight. He may go out there and lose a decision, but he's going to go out there and put on a show. Same kind of like you. Doesn't matter. You're going to take a fight regardless. And I think like you said, 19 fights into your career at this point, you know, you're kind of, would you say that you're kind of like good with where you're at in your career and it's like everything you've done up to this point is kind of like good to go after your next fight?
yeah. I think I'll always have like a little regret.
Sure.
Just basically how I handled the early part of my career. I was out in clubs and
Sure.
strip clubs and
Yeah.
things, and having a hangover, and you think you're giving 100%, but if your battery's only at 50, then
Yeah.
you're not. And so I've lost a lot of money because the way the pay is set up is it's show and win money. Like you get whatever, $10 if you show up, another $10 if you win.
Yeah.
So all the fights that I've lost, with the exception of Roundtree. I was in the fight. I could have won maybe if I would have pushed a little harder, or training room stuff
Sure.
that shows up in the fight. So I could just as easily have seven less
Sure.
losses, which
Yeah.
that's a lot of money that I missed out on. Roundtree, I don't, even on my best day, I think
I mean,
I think he beats my
that
ass
dude's
no
something
matter
else,
what,
man.
especially that version of Roundtree. So outside of
Sure.
that, every fight that I've lost, I think I had an opportunity that I
Yeah.
didn't, capitalize on. Not necessarily like during the fight, but leading up to the fight, training for the fight that showed up in the fight.
100%.
So, but outside of that, I'm 20 fights in the UFC. That's a nice little feather in my cap.
Heck yeah, man. And now, you're about to start the next chapter in your life, probably coaching, opening up a new gym. Definitely going to have to come out there and check it out, man. Going to have to come out
Yeah,
there in person and maybe get some rolls in with some killers out there, man.
yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah. When are you expecting that to happen?
Later this year,
Nice. Nice.
so yeah, it's exciting.
It is.
It's a headache. It's a little nerve wracking because you're putting a lot of money into it and a lot of time, effort, and energy, and you have to make it work. Because if the gym doesn't work, then
Yeah.
you're gonna see me in Russia fighting some
That's
Russian dude. And that's the thing, like being an athlete, like I've seen like over the course of my life, you see guys play too long,
yeah.
and then you see guys like want to retire, but they can't retire. They do retire, then they come back and they have to take some crazy fight
Yeah.
for whatever. And I just never wanted to be in that position. So,
I
I
look
think
at it like
I
Anthony Smith. It's like, man, just quit, like retire already, man. Like it,
well,
it,
I
it just
mean,
gets sad,
I think he was making like a 500,000
I know.
flat per
Yeah.
fight. So yeah, they're gonna have to kick me out if my check ever
Sure.
gets that high. Then yeah, then
Yeah.
they're gonna have to tell me to stop. I'm not gonna willingly stop.
That's true. That's true.
Give
But
me
no,
two
man, that
fights a year and I'm good.
I hear you. But no, that's good for you, man. We're super excited to see what's to come with your gym. Like I said, we're definitely going to get out there and check it out and in time soon, in due time. So, but yeah, as far as we'll kind of wrap this thing up a little bit. I appreciate your time. If there's anybody you want to shout out, man, tell us the name of the gym. If we can expect a date or anything like that. Just tell us tell us who you want to shout out, man.
Yeah, my big sponsor, A Game. It's a great drink. A lot of natural ingredients and stuff. Even Gary Braca endorses
Nice.
it. Yeah, I think the gym will be open late August,
Oh, nice. Soon.
early September. Your boy Fitness and Jiu Jitsu. So be sure to come check it out in
Your
Vestavia.
boy fitness and jujitsu. I love it. Love it. Well,
That's
cool,
pretty
man.
good.
Well, again, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Look forward to your grappling match in July. Definitely gonna make an appearance. Stop by if I have some time to introduce myself. If there's a chance, I'm gonna stop by, shake your hand, introduce myself.
Yeah, of
We
course,
really look
please.
forward. We really look forward to your upcoming fight. We always say if you come on our show, we're a fan forever. We've obviously been fans before this interview because you've been in the UFC for so long. We've been fans of the game for a while. So we appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, my man, I appreciate it anytime.
Yeah, man. Well, you have a wonderful Sunday, man. Enjoy your week, and we'll catch up soon.
We'll see you next month.
Yes, sir, man. I'll holler at you.
Bye.